Very enthusiastic about The Cure.
Are you enthusiastic again?
Hugely, yeah. Everything we've done has been based on my instinct. It wasn't the point of the group, and it never has been and never will be, to be successful. But the point of the group has always been so that I can do what I want. But I can't honestly think of anything I would rather be doing, so I just keep doing this. It either shows a lack of imagination or it just means I'm very, very happy in my job, you know? Or both.
Whether or not it's you or whether it's just people clamoring for new music or for The Cure just to always be there because it's comforting to them, I don't know, but there's something about this band that won't disappear quietly. Yeah, I think that there's a number of factors that they are two of them. One of them is actually the comfort factor. I've begun to realise that we kind of talk to people, and I've been making music now for longer than they've been born. It's pretty terrifying in one way, but in another way, it's comforting for me because I still feel exactly the same. I still feel the same enthusiasm before we go on stage as I did when we very first started playing. I'm just wondering if you ever pine for the cozy days of being that cult band again.
But the only way I'm aware of it is actually in a very helpful way. It's when I'm singing in the studio. I feel really enervated by the fact that I think there are people in the world that want to hear me sing. I mean, it really does help. It's like, in the old days, that was really difficult because I felt like no one wants to hear this, you know. I had a lot of, like crises of confidence when I was younger. It's hard to believe, but, because I was always struggling against the idea of, like, well, why am I bothering to do this? The first 3 albums, no one bought. No one used to come and see us play very much, so I used to think, what's the point, you know? It's like us against the world. That was the constant struggle of, like, you know, the battle to make people listen, and then the idea of, like, well, why make them listen, you know? Whereas now I think, well, it's really gratifying that there is an audience there that's interested in what I'm going to do and what The Cure do. That's the reason why the group started, really, was that I get really affected by music, like what I listen to, and when I was just being bombarded by awful music just from all around me. When I was about sort of 14 or 15, I just thought I wanted to do something about it. So I've always wanted the group to play music that I enjoy, and as my tastes have changed over the years, our style of music's changed, and it's not really taken into consideration what anyone else thinks about the group. So it is a very selfish attitude, but at the same time, I think people have, over the years, have respected that. They actually like the idea that we do what we want. There's a limit beyond which we'd never appeal, which is something that we accepted when we started. I mean, we were never massively popular, but it doesn't really make any difference. There's very few things I can think of that would be worse than spending your life trying to sell a lot of records in Canada or America. It's all like based on an attitude more than anything else, and our attitude has always stayed the same. It's like a total disregard for what other people do and what other people think. When Simon joined in 1979, I thought for the first time that I was involved in a group that could actually do something. Started getting very miserable. Not through, I don't know really why we did any of that. I think everyone gets pretty miserable around that period of their lives, in their early 20s, which culminated in probably one of the most depressing records ever made, which was the Pornography album, which was a good experience in a very bizarre kind of way. It was really, really horrible. That's something that I'd like to repeat.
The original audience was one that used to more or less not scream.
Yeah, but the original audience was much younger. I mean, they've sort of grown up with us, and another lot has moved in place of them, they're sort of the same age, like 16 and 17.
So the new young group is the one that's screaming?
Yeah, because they seem to be more girl than boy, whereas we used to be a much more sort of boy group.
What do you think of this new crop of fans that's coming up? Because it seems to me that if anybody is the antithesis of the pop star group, it is The Cure.
Yeah, but at the same time, it'd be the most frustrating thing in the world to stay with the same audience. You'd end up being something horrible like Supertramp or something like that. Right, you're bloody well right. I mean, Duran Duran would probably have housewives screaming at them in 10 years.
Was it weird when you were in the pinup magazines? All of a sudden, there's Robert Smith in these pinup magazines with you?
I mean, I just thought it wasn't... I didn't think it was about how you looked. I thought it was about what you meant to people. And I meant something because of Duran Duran and our songs, and Robert's the same thing. It was perfectly normal. We made a decision that we should change our roots. After Pornography, when we released Let's Go to Bed, we knew that we'd be like getting in a new batch of people. But I mean, it keeps the whole thing more up, really, for us, more interesting. There is a side to The Cure which is very blasé, very banal and very flippant. And but that's just really now to try and balance up the sort of the harder side. What we do. A few years ago, we didn't have that kind of pop side. It completely disappeared, and we became a very difficult group, I think. Right from the start, we didn't really sign contracts. We didn't have managers. We still haven't got a manager. We've never had a management contract. Just things because I always felt that if it was what I wanted to do and if I was enjoying it, I should be able to do it without the help of other people. Ultimately, I sort of have the final say.
I just think they're great.
Why? Is it the music, the image?
Their lyrics, absolutely. Robert Smith writes the most beautiful songs.
He's gorgeous. Just everything about him. The music, the words.
It's very sexy.
How strong is the persona of Robert Smith? Because for the last 6 months, every time that you see some little girl with a funny haircut, she says, when's Robert Smith coming in? She doesn't say, when is The Cure coming in? It's when's Robert Smith coming in?
I suppose it's just sort of developed over the years that I've become like a focal point. I mean, it's not something that we try and play on. But I mean, the others encourage it because it means that they can stay in bed when I have to come and do this.
Did it surprise you in the 80s where you achieved this pinup status without marketing, without seeking it out, without playing into it? It just kind of happened.
That's why, though.
Did it surprise you then? When you see all these other sort of pinups and then there's Robert Smith?
When I sort of like changed direction after Pornography and I got very fed up with being a dark icon. I was aware for the first time with Pornography that people were expecting me to keep pushing it. And so I thought I would have some fun. I think the balancing act that went on with me trying to like was helped by the fact that I played in the Banshees for a year and a half. I think I was perceived as subverting rather than like embracing, which helped looking back. At the time, I was very blissfully unaware of that because I was out of my head most of the time.
Robert's head got a bit scrambled after being in The Cure and the Banshees.
Speaking of Robert Smith, once again.
Why?
Shall we move on?
Yes, why not?
Why was she so mean like that?
Well, there's lots of reasons, but they're not worth talking about, really. I prefer being in The Cure to being in the Banshees. If she prefers being in the Banshees to being in The Cure, it's fine, but she doesn't know the other side of it, you see, so she doesn't really know what she's missing. I did. It was good fun being with the Banshees, it's like for about a year and a half. But it just got to the point when I thought I'd rather be back, doing the Cure stuff. No, I think it also helped because we'd made 4 albums before we started to get commercially successful. I'd paid my dues, so when success started to come in, I used to find it kind of weird, I suppose, when I started to appear on magazine covers, but I kind of accepted it because it was part of what I was doing. I didn't feel really happy that I was on the front of magazines, nor did I feel really kind of disturbed by it. I just thought, well, that's what happens when you start to get popular. So I think it was much more difficult when people started to try and look like me, which happened sort of like in the mid-80s. That was the only time I felt like I was losing my grasp on reality.
How is it for you when here are all these Robert Smith lookalikes right in the front of the stage looking back at you?
I've got such short sight, I very rarely see any of them. I just don't feel that comfortable about being stared at so much anymore. You know, it gets to me. I mean, we've only reached like a very moderate level of success compared to, you know, other people who are wildly successful, but I think that a lot of them want to be successful. And I never really imagined that we'd get to this point. The addictive nature of like that kind of the sense of being stared at and the adulation it is, I mean, it does feed your vanity to an enormous degree, and sometimes it's really good fun, you know, and it'd be stupid and dishonest to deny it. But it can reach a point when, if you lose sight of the actual reason why you're on stage and why you're performing to people, the whole thing just becomes very hollow. And I think that's what happens to too many people. I think that sort of aspiration to be famous at all costs is it's just anathema to everything I believe in. If you become well known through doing something that's really good, for me it's a byproduct. I mean, there have been times when I just kind of think it would be much easier for me to do what I do if I wasn't quite so well known. It would be a more comfortable life. And I just find it's impinging on my personal life too much. I mean, I do this, so it's kind of paradoxical me saying it, but when I live my normal life, I don't go out of my way to be noticed. You know, it doesn't interest me in the slightest. And people who would just do anything to be noticed, I mean, I think it's pathologically kind of deranged, actually.
Let me take you on a trip.
Did it ever get too scary, some of the fanaticism?
Right, in Athens, when we played a gig there once, with The Cure, there was some riots and stuff going on. That was pretty scary. We all got kind of put in the back of the truck and...
getting lobbed over into the office.
Yeah, there was rocks hitting the truck. We were in the back of the truck with The Cure, you know, sitting around going, oh, God, we're going to die. I remember distinctly Robert in the back of the truck. These kids were, like, they were throwing, like, parts of fences, like spears. A couple of them were coming, like, through the truck, you know.
It was awful. It was a really, really awful experience. Came to North America in about 1986 or 87 on the back of the Stand on the Beach album, and I suddenly realised that we'd become a really kind of popular band, and that was the only time I've ever struggled, I think, to cope with that kind of attention. It's a joke most of the time. Yeah, that's why I cut my hair. We're definitely better than the average group that plays live. There's without question, because we see other groups play live and they're just not as good as us. But I mean, it's not being belligerent about it or being, you know, like big-headed even. I mean, if we didn't think that we were good, then we wouldn't play. I don't mind thinking that we're the best group in the world. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't expect people to believe me, but what else am I going to say? I think as long as the group keeps going, we should play concerts, however infrequently, because you sort of, it just makes it more complete, it's more satisfying.
In the corner of the room, and there is nothing I can do. I realize you're fright. Spider-Man is having me for dinner tonight.
It's such a good feeling when it gets to that kind of level. You can actually, you'll look up and you'll see all these people and you'll think, oh, they're all listening to what we're doing, and it can be, you know, it's like a very weird sort of feeling. And isn't that strange to understand why it's a good feeling and why you want to sort of like have that feeling again? But at the same time, I have to keep in my mind that it's unnatural. The whole thing is very unnatural because that has never come naturally to me. I'm much more aware of how hideous we look. So we tend to keep our heads down more when we play. We've become popular through default in a weird way. just over the years, what's happened is we've managed to retain, I think, our audience, like our old audience, and just add to it. I'm surprised at how popular we've become in North America.
Explaining yourself.
Yeah, I really am. Just because of what I look at that is popular, I see very little that I can feel any empathy with or anything that I actually enjoy. So obviously, if we become successful, I wonder why. The Cure is a band. It always has been, and even though I've written 90% of the stuff, who's in the band really determines like what the sound is and how things get done. And although there's been a band called The Cure over like 20-something years now, there's for me there've been like 5 pretty distinct bands called The Cure. It isn't one band. I haven't been in one band. You know, I've been in 5 different bands that all had the same name. That's the way I look at it. Everyone that's been in the band, I think, that they've had their own drives and ambitions, and sometimes it kind of just falls out of step with what the band is. It's a very democratic process when we're working together, but if I want to drag the group somewhere, everyone has the choice to sort of go that way or not.
It takes more than musicianship, I would think. It takes a state of mind to be in this group.
Yeah, it's well, from my point, when I joined, it was pretty nerve-wracking, the thought of joining The Cure, because you have this mental picture of this very somber, very severe group of people. But it's not like that, is it?
It's very good. Very funny jokes.
Some of the time.
It's an attitude, and the important thing about The Cure has always been if you fit in with that attitude, just like that outlook, what you want from being in a group. And people come and go. I mean, like in like nearly 20 years, people's like attitude and their life, or what they want from life, or what they want from the group they're in, is going to change. That's what people come and go. It's really like a big argument and like can't live with you. That kind of people just come and go according to that. And the attitude or the direction The Cure wants to follow just has basically been the same.
I left for 18 months after an argument, but then I came back and been there ever since.
Now, The Cure's history is a bit of a revolving door, so what keeps people coming back?
God, without seeming horrible, I hope it's the consistency of the music, and like there's always sort of an ongoing friendship as well.
Yeah. So even when the band's not touring together or not recording an album, you all still keep in touch, you're all friends?
Yeah.
Party together?
I wouldn't say we'd party together, not anymore.
Party last night, though.
I didn't
No?
No.
Oh.
No, I've mended my ways.
The prerequisite of being in the group and staying in it really is just that you get on with everyone else and you sort of like what we're doing. There's never been any sense of you're in the group, so you're in the group. You have to sort of want to be, and you have to enjoy it and contribute something as well.
I realize you're right. Start having me for dinner tonight.
Disintegration. Is there a theme to this record?
The whole project was triggered by me writing the words to the song Disintegration about last April, around the time of my 29th birthday last year. And it was just about the sense of falling apart that I can't ever seem to shake off. That I think it's true for everyone, really. It's kind of a paradox, I think, that you're forced into accepting age the older you get. But I still try and sort of fight against it. I mean, against the sort of the mental decline and the physical decline that comes with age. That sort of your loss of a sense of wonder at things. And that, you know, I mean, having nephews and nieces, it's brought home ever more frequently that how old I'm getting. You know, just like inside my head. I've not been fascinated by things that I used to think were really fascinating, and it's just a bit worrying. It's a bit sad. You know, so I try and fight against it by doing something. Like writing songs. I don't know why, but you sort of hit certain ages and you sort of reevaluate like what you're doing, what you're going to do. So I think it's the same for everyone. It just comes out in different ways. Some people get divorced, some people get married.
Love Song sounds like perhaps the most traditional thing that you've ever written. Are you proud of it for that reason?
Yeah, it was because me and Mary got married last year and I couldn't think what to give her for a wedding present, so I wrote her that song, Cheap and Cheerful.
I will always love you.
But after Disintegration, which was both commercially and fan-wise was like a really popular album, like a successful album on every level, like artistic and commercial. The next thing we did was the Mixed Up album, which was hated by critics and fans, and I knew it would be, but it didn't stop me doing it.
The Cure, I love their music, has been always with me since my puberty.
I've always been flattered by other artists name-checking The Cure. Even the rare occasions when people have said they like us and I don't like them.
Really, just one of my favourite bands. I love them.
I think they're one of the greatest bands ever.
When it's bands I actually really like, and I've even gone as far as to buy their record, and then I find out they like us, it's a great feeling. It doesn't really validate what I do, but it enhances what I do immeasurably, to think that we are inspiring other people to do something. It's great.
I don't care if Monday's blue, Tuesday's grey and Wednesday too. Thursday, I don't care about you, it's Friday, I'm in love. Monday, you can fall apart. Tuesday, Wednesday, break my heart. Oh, Thursday doesn't even start, it's Friday, I'm in love. Saturday, wait. Sunday always comes soon.
It was easy to say, like, we planned this, like, but you couldn't go into anything being like that contrived and say, like, well, we are the Cure and the Cure represents this, so that, you know, the Cure will represent whatever we're doing at the time, but it will always change and become what we are.
I mean, we are a mainstream band, and yet the mainstream considers us to be like a cult alternative band. Cult alternative people consider us to be a mainstream band. I think we are like a mainstream band, but we're just kind of slightly off sometimes, you know. And not through willfully trying to be weird, but just kind of like because we just do what we want, so we don't stick, you know, so we're not formulaic. So there is still like an element of you're never quite sure. Most of the themes that we deal with anyway are universal. This is why it translates around the world. Our best songs are the ones that musically you don't even need to understand what I'm singing. You kind of get what I'm singing from the combination of the sound of how I'm singing it and the music. That's when you've written a good song, you know that someone who can't speak your language is going to know what that song means. That part of the process is very natural. I don't think I'll ever have a block on writing music, because it's something that I just find very, very natural. When I sit down at a piano or I pick up a guitar, if I'm in the mood, I kind of just like think of something, and I never analyse that. I never think, like, is this going to work? Because it either works or it doesn't, and that's the thing about music. You can't work on it too much. The idea's either there and it's good, and then you kind of enhance it, or it isn't there. And the problem I think with like most people who make records is they haven't got the ideas there in the first place. So it doesn't matter how much gloss you put on it, you know. You're kind of like shining coal. It just never works. I honestly don't remember writing a lot of the words over the years. About 75% of them come when I'm in some kind of altered state, either through self-induced or I'm half asleep, or and they're usually just there. I sort of find bits of paper in my pocket or on a bus or at home under my pillow and things. It's very rare that I actually sit down and think, right, I'll write a song, I'll get this out of me. It is hard work for me actually writing words. I'm happy with that. It's a mixture of kind of my own limitations and a dreadful sense of perfectionism. Looking back, I find it difficult to decipher some of the things that I've written. Yeah, it's a very haphazard process until I get to the moment where I have to sing. And it's not up until that moment, I'm never really sure about how the song's going to happen. And then I do the vocal, and then I start to analyse it, and I start to think. Sometimes it works first time, like about once every 100 songs. The band is involved hugely, but I do get left on my own a lot. I don't care what the others say. I mean, I'm there every minute of the day, and they kind of like put in an appearance every other day.
Robert does like to build up layers of sounds, shall we say. He never stops.
We've still got it. I mean, it's mainly in the British press, and it kind of filters out from there. And it's really a laziness. The reviews, we're still quintessentially a goth band. You know, I think, for f***'s sake, come on.
Whereas in North America, you were loved. There was never a question that The Cure are a lot older than these other bands right now.
Yeah. It was, I mean, it's never been difficult for us anywhere but the UK, actually. We've never had that perspective in Europe either. But that was a period when, I mean, they were stickering CDs with Union Jacks, you know, and trying to make that whole kind of Cool Britannia thing work. And I made the mistake, I suppose, at the time it was a mistake of just saying that I thought that the whole thing was just bollocks, basically, and that didn't go down very well. But with hindsight, I was right, and they were wrong, because most of it was just dire, you know, the sense of just like branding everything with a Union Jack, and it's cool, and it's rubbish, but it was all right. It gave some breathing space in a funny way, because it kind of steeled my resolve in a strange way, because I thought, I'm not going to be beaten by this. I don't have this like pretentious, kind of precious notion of what I do as being art, but I mean, if we do something, I want it to kind of like to excite people, and for there to be something there if they want to go and look for it. But if they don't, then it should also kind of work on a very simplistic level, which is, I think, probably the reason why we've succeeded is because there are tunes, is what I'm saying.
Lime green and tangerine, the sickly sweet colours of the snakes I'm seeing. Lime green.
I really do think it is the songs, because without the songs, everything else would just fall apart. If no one liked the songs, it wouldn't really, you know, I wouldn't be sitting here talking. It wouldn't make any sense. But I think there is a side to it. It isn't just the songs. There is a side to it that's the people that I talk to that like the group are often just like the idea of a group like The Cure being there, because it shows that you can do things in your own way, and we kind of represent saying, well, you don't have to do it that way. You can do it your own way and still be successful. And it wasn't the point of the group, and it never has been and never will be, to be successful. But the point of the group has always been so that I can do what I want. And people just like that. But people who are fans of the group like it. People who don't like it are like journalists who resent the fact that I'm able to do what I want, and other people like it. We're very aware of how devoted our audience is. In a strange way, people want us to continue to exist, which is sort of worrying, because I think if we stop, we're kind of like the last band of our generation. A lot of our older fans like us just to keep going at all costs. You know? And I think
there's an awful lot of pressure.
Yeah, although I mean that isn't why I keep going.
Oh, come on, and have a drink with me. Sit down and talk a while. Oh, I wish I could, and I will. But now I just don't have the time. And over my shoulder as I walk away, I see you give that look goodbye. I still see that look in your eye.
I just had an idea that I probably wouldn't live to be old men. That's changed, though. You know?
Are you enthusiastic again?
Hugely, yeah. But I can't honestly think of anything I would rather be doing. So I just keep doing this.
Looking back at the whole career of The Cure, I think it can be surmised in one word, and that's to borrow an album title, faith, because you've done it your way this whole time. You've never compromised, you've never followed trends.
Yeah, I think that we've always done just things that we wanted to do, and it's turned out right.
It's a lot easier said than done, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but they're generally it's just like everything we do is based on instinct, and it's like waking up in the morning and wanting to be in The Cure is like the most important thing.
You speak so proudly of Bloodflowers.
I felt as we were making it that it was going to be an album that would be remembered in the same way as Disintegration has been remembered. Like 10 years on from Disintegration, fans still refer to it as like it's like a touchstone album. And as we were completing the songs on Bloodflowers, I felt the same way as I felt about Disintegration. That it was kind of you know, an archetypal album. I knew what I wanted from the album. I was looking back when I turned 39 and I was heading towards being 40, and I thought I should write about how I felt about becoming a 40-year-old. It was that. I was worried at the same time that it would be introspective to the point of being boring, because I was thinking, like, I did this 10 years ago with Disintegration. But as I started writing and I was trying to complement what I was writing lyrically with what I was doing musically, I realised that there was a totally different mood, and in fact that I am a totally different person than I was when I was 30.
Side by side in silence, they pass away the day. So comfortable, so habitual, and so nothing left to say.
When you turned 30, you were freaked out, but when you turned 40, you were fine with it?
When I was younger, I was really, you know, like in my teens, I invested a lot of negative things into, like, the idea of becoming 30 was old.
Yeah.
And I thought, I hope I get everything done before I turn 30, because that's it, you know, no one does anything good after 30. I mean, I knew in the back of my mind that it was rubbish, because my favourite, like, the true great composers of classical music, like, and some, you know, the greatest works of literature are often written by people who are past 30. But I thought in the idiom that I was working, I thought, this is it, I've got to get it all done by 30. 40 didn't really mean as much, because I never thought I'd get to 40. So it was it was a relief more than anything to get to 40. And I think also the 10 years between 30 and 40, I have just had a much better time. You know, from being a 20-year-old to a 30-year-old, it was as I'm sure it is for everyone, it's like just more kind of traumatic.
You always thought you were going to die young.
I tried very hard at one stage. It was partly me, and it was partly to do with, like, what The Cure began to represent, and partly to do with, like, what people wanted. You know, it's like people like the idea of someone like me dying young. I, along with Simon, you know, just had an idea that we probably wouldn't live to be old men. That's changed, though. You know? I think it's also just like experience. It's like you know, seeing other people around you dying young, which I've had the unfortunate experience a couple of times. It takes the gloss off it. You know, there's no glamour in dying young. There really isn't. There are any misconceptions about me that I worry about, because they're all in the general media, and it's just to be expected. I don't think that the people who are into the band, or, you know, anyone who calls himself a Cure fan, I think has a pretty good idea of what I'm like by now. They must have. It's just there, you know. It's like I can't have done all this for so long and people not know something about what I'm like. The endless misconceptions in the mainstream media, I kind of gave up on a long time ago, because I suppose the only one that really gets me is that I'm like I am in the songs all the time, which I'm obviously not. You know, I don't live a life that's, you know, I'm not a 19th century romantic poet. When I meet people, they want me to kind of, like, be wandering about, you know, holding a candle with a book, you know, Baudelaire in the other hand, and mist around my feet. And they sort of think, oh, no, it's not like that at all, and get very disappointed. But I've never, ever built it out myself. I'm not responsible for that character that's been developed. The one that I've engendered is, like, in the videos, it's like an idiot. There's a part of me needs to do something in The Cure, and has done for a long time, but my everyday life is pretty banal. You know?
We only get to stay so long. Always have to go back to real life, where we belong.
Was there a mood that this was going to be the end in the studio? The last Cure record?
Yeah, there is still an undercurrent within the band. They expect me to be serious this time. There's a part of me that really wants it to end with Bloodflowers, because it's just a perfect way to end, and so few groups end while they're good. So it would be nice, I think, just to leave it as something that I could be proud of. When we did the Bloodflowers tour, I really felt like we were on a farewell tour. Everywhere we went, you know, the others, there's this unspoken assumption that we would never be back, you know. It was never as dramatic as that. We did bill it as the farewell tour. I didn't go on stage and kind of, you know, throw roses into the crowd. But when we'd come off, there was this sense of, you know, well, we won't be back here again as a band. So it was slightly melancholic, that tour. So yeah, I was pretty serious about ending it, because I'd always promised myself that I would I would reach 40 and then I would do something else. And it was all going to plan, except that I didn't actually feel like I wanted to stop. That was the flaw in the plan. So I had in mind to do one other thing, which make a film, as to kind of like complete my project with The Cure.
When Blood Flowers was finished, it was considered to be the third part of the other two being Pornography and Disintegration.
This idea of just doing an album worked perfectly. I thought if we could do that with 3 albums, I mean, it's a pretty ambitious undertaking. And very shortly after that, in fact, during the summer festivals themselves, I suggested to the others that we try and do these 3 albums, one after the other, back to back. Everyone was a little bit incredulous at first.
Robert said, let's do it.
You left your longtime label. Was it as dark as it looked from the outside?
It was pretty surreal, actually, because we ended with Fiction, and it was a very sour end, actually, after like more than 20 years with them. They were very underhand with me, but the trade-off was just really... I needed to stay involved with them because I wanted the Greatest Hits package to happen properly and Join the Dots box set to happen. I needed to be involved, so I couldn't really kind of say all that I wanted to say, so I just kind of bit my lip. But it was good, actually, because it gave me freedom as an artist for the first time since I've been doing this. So I went off and did lots of collaborations with people, and people were asking me to do things, and I was saying, yeah, OK. I didn't have to ask anyone's permission.
I hear her voice calling my name. The sound is deep in the dark.
You were on a lot of remixes and dance singles. That couldn't have happened if you had your hands tied?
No, they never let me do things like that.
Wow.
Because they felt that if I sang on anything, people would think it was The Cure. So somehow it would eat into our sales. It's such nonsense, it really is. It might surprise some people to know that I do actually listen to quite a lot of dance music. It's I just sit there and listen to it and wish I could dance really well.
Whoa, it's not my call. You couldn't ever love me more. Couldn't love me more. Couldn't love.
Doing Blood Flowers and not re-signing and then Trilogy, which is supposed to be it. That was, for me, that was like kind of The Cure's epitaph. So when Ross came along and kind of nudged me back in the direction of like just do one more Cure album, you know, and I thought I'll regret it if I don't take this opportunity. So we went and did it, and I handed over control of it to him, and it was really like a really liberating experience because I was part of the band again for the first time in years, and I just kind of enjoyed the process much more. And it did feel like we were doing something new. On the one hand, it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in the studio. It was the most raw and emotional and intense experience I've ever had in the studio. And yet, on the other hand, it was the most enjoyable. I was sadder on the last day in the studio than I've ever been leaving the studio. I've so enjoyed the last couple of weeks of this tour. It's unreal, you know. It's like I am kind of reliving my youth a little bit. I think I've been making music now for longer than they've been born. Some of the bands in this bill, actually.
The Cure is probably one of my first musical memories.
The Cure, they were the first band I ever went to see. I saw them when I was 14 on the Disintegration tour in Glasgow.
They're partly inspired by how we do what we do. It's not to do with what we sound like. It's entirely to do with how we've managed to keep going for so long.
It's just the end of the end of the world.
The Cure really, by their doing what they wanted and by their influence of bands over the years, are kind of like one of the first alternative rock bands.
Every time we go on, like the other bands are saying, do you know, like, they keep giving me like wish list. Can you play this one tonight? It is slightly surreal, actually.
Really, just one of my favourite bands. I love them.
I think they're one of the greatest bands ever.
It's really nice to meet someone that, people that you really look up to and like them as people as well.
You see, like, he watches, you know, the bands pretty much nightly, and he's really passionate about the music.
It was quite funny when they saw me watching them. Yeah, their reactions were...
You saw he was just so excited by the whole thing, you know? Like, it's nice that someone who's been putting out music for 25 years is still, like, a genuine music enthusiast.
When did you first start hearing from bands? The Cure has been a huge influence in my life.
I think the first time we had a proper, like, a real cover version done was Dinosaur Jr. covered Just Like Heaven in 1988, I think. And they were, and the Pixies used to say good things about us, and I felt really proud that we were kind of part of some kind of inspiration behind some of those bands who started the grunge scene, and it was because I really loved what everyone did. You know, I just thought it was one of the best movements there's ever been. So from that point on, I kind of realised there have been other bands down the years. I mean, there's not been such a clamouring as there has been in the last year, but there've always been bands who've kind of nodded our way. A bunch of people are very, very enthusiastic about The Cure.
Are you enthusiastic again?
Hugely, yeah. I can't